Hey, Mayor Church, if you can hear me, I am trying to promote you to a panelist. So that if I pop up, go ahead and accept it.
Okay. Thank you, Olivia.
You're welcome.
Doing a mic check.
Working.
Thank you, Mayor.
You are the biggest thing that catches you out of school and transit coordination.
If you want.
Which I think we've gotten pretty good with transit. The school.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're gonna go ahead and get started. I think we've got a forum here. Let's go ahead and have an introduction. Let's start in the room here. Mr. Kress,
Hello, I'm Scott Kress, Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly Member.
Jerry Cleareth, Fairbanks City Council, and coming in the door, yes, I'll say it for him, Mayor Hopkins, Mayor of the North Star Borough. And online, please.
Larry Church, Mayor of the City of North Pole.
Jason Holmes, DEC Air Quality.
We officially started this meeting at 12:05. Okay, can we have introductions around the room, please? Laura, let's start with you here.
Lauren Little, Chief Engineer, Alaska DOT and TF.
Brett Nelson, DOT, Fairbanks Planning. John Natardis, DOT Design Manager and Technical Committee Member.
Go ahead.
Charles Hickson from Alliance CPAs.
Kathleen Thompson, Alliance CPAs.
Alex Spillman, the Borough's Planning Department. I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. We are wanting to move an item on the agenda here before we actually have approval for the agenda to move the annual tax return and audit, the presentation by Alliance CPA. That currently is item 8B as in boy. I'd like to move it up to 7A if we could.
We're under A and B. Audit first, then tax return second.
You're right, I skipped one of them, 8A and B. Thank you, Jackson. Unless there's objection to that, and now I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
I moved by Kraft, seconded by Mayor Church, I believe. Yeah. Any other changes? Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Yes, Mr. Cleareth,
Yes.
Mr. Krass. Yes. Mr. Hopkins. Yes. Mayor Church
Yes.
and Mr. Rolls.
Yes.
All right, that brings us up to number 4, approval of the April 16th, 2025 meeting minutes. Can I hear a motion on that, please?
Move to approve the April 16th, 2025 meeting minutes.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kraft, seconded by Mayor Hopkins. Anyone wishing to make changes? Seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Yeah, Mr. Krass,
Yes.
Mayor Hopkins. Yeah. Cleareth,
Yes.
Mayor Church
Yes.
and Mr. Rolls.
Yes.
Brings us item 5, which is the staff report. Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cleareth. So beginning on page 21 is my staff report for activities and meetings over the past month since we last met. On page 21, I want to highlight one of these. We did hold our interagency consultation meeting with our federal partners on the update to the regional emissions analysis for the Fairbanks PM2.5 non-attainment area. We called this meeting as a result of the EPA publishing their adequacy finding for the new motor vehicle emission budgets for the serious state implementation plan for air quality for our area. That was published on May 8th, and 15 days following that publication, those new motor vehicle emission budgets will go into effect. So we had a consultation meeting with our federal partners and state partners and our consultant team, Trinity Consultants, to kind of outline the scope of work for updating our regional emissions analysis to show that we meet or are under those budgets. So it was a lot of discussion about process. We did hear from our federal partners in that meeting that we can utilize our existing long and short range transportation plans for the basis of that analysis. So we do not need to update those plans prior to doing the emissions analysis. And that work can begin following the close of that 15-day public notice period, which would be May 23rd. And our hope is that our consultant team will begin working on this soon, hopefully before the end of the month or in June, and that the work only takes a few months. The interagency consultation group asked that the work simply proceed, and once a draft report of the updated analysis is prepared, that we will reconvene to compare the inputs and model outputs of that analysis with our federal partners prior to approval of that emissions analysis. Our hope is to kind of wrap all this up by October. So again, if we can demonstrate that we meet the new motor vehicle emission budgets, the conformity freeze will be lifted. So balls in our court at this time, working on that. And we've made progress. On the next page, page 22, under correspondence communications, I did prepare revisions to the letter to the congressional delegation of USDA on transportation sanctions to the Clean Air Act, and we'll take that up as an action item underneath item 7B. And then underneath organization, we have also updated the bylaws with the proposed revisions from the technical committee, as well as the proposed revisions received from Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaworth. So that is on the agenda today as well for action with the combined revisions between those parties. And then we have continued work on the annual audit and tax return with Alliance CPAs, and that'll be our first presentation here today once we get down to our order of business after the public comment period. And then for public education and outreach, this is Bike to Work Month, Bike to Work Week, all of the above. We do have volunteers out right now, Tuesday through Thursday, doing the annual bicycle and pedestrian counts at intersections throughout Fairbanks and North Pole. And the tally was 50. Yeah, so we have 50 volunteers signed up to do that. And then Olivia has been busy hosting booths for Bike to Work Week. And she also hosted a booth for the downtown market in Old Park Plaza, the first one of the season here. And then myself and Assemblymember Crass attended the Alaska House Transportation Committee meeting a few weeks ago on NPO boundary development. There was a presentation by Lauren Little of DOT. Mr. Crass provided testimony at that committee meeting, and I was present to help answer questions. And then submittals and reports. We have turned in our Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP Amendment number 1 to DOT for incorporation into the statewide Transportation Improvement Program. That was submitted to DOT on April 18th, 2 days following our last policy board meeting. As of right now, I've not yet heard that the STIP amendment, which includes our TIP amendment, has been turned into federal highways for review and approval. And we're kind of anxious to get that to the Alaska Division Office of the Federal Highway Administration to get that approval. So a handful of projects in the Fairbanks North Pole area can get out for bid this summer for construction. Moving on from our staff report, page 23 is the technical committee action items from May 7th. They're meeting earlier this month. This first page here relates to the revisions from the bylaws. I won't go through these one by one with you at this time, but when we get to the bylaws section on the agenda, we'll work through the revisions proposed by the technical committee and Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaworth. There is actually quite a bit in alignment between the revisions. And the technical committee agreed with many of the revisions that Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaworth submitted. There's just a couple items that I think warrant some discussion with the board today for a decision on language in the bylaws. And then next page, page 24, the technical committee did recommend that the board approve the letter to the EPA and congressional delegation today on penalties in the Clean Air Act. And then with relation to the roles and responsibilities document for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the technical committee actually did not want to change the name of the committee to the Walk and Roll Committee. And that was, I believe that was unanimous. So though they thought that the name was kind of fun and catchy, you know, for the community, that potentially it takes away from some of the legitimacy or importance when, say, this committee drafts a letter or offers a letter of support for something that might get sent to the legislature or the assembly or the city council. And then they also, the technical committee also recommended that the 4 additional seats that this committee would like to add, that those be non-voting ex officio members. So what I'm doing with this item, rather than it be on the agenda for the policy board today, I'm referring the roles and responsibilities document back to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, because I know that they had a number of alternative names that they were looking at in addition to Walk and Roll Committee. So I'd like to share the feedback that we've received in the technical committee with them and see if they would like to reconsider their name change, and then we'll bring it back to the technical committee of the policy board. Okay. Next page, page 25. This just shows you the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee's action items for their name change and adding 4 new seats. And then on page 26, it shows you their latest meeting on April 24th, where they made a motion to actually change their meeting frequency or reduce their meeting frequency from monthly to every other month. And that'll greatly assist staff effort in for that committee. And then behind that, pages 27 and 28 just show you the active revisions to the roles and responsibility document, which again, I'm planning to refer back to that committee to see if they'd like to reconsider their name change, something that might be more successful with the technical committee and policy board. And Olivia, we also, I guess my last item here for the staff report. We want to encourage that everyone at this meeting, we're also sent this out to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting to attend the Matt Glover bike path dedication. This is the new bike path between the Gars intersection and the First Badger exit along Richardson Highway. Sorry, I'm reading here from you, Rhinish, but I believe you all understand how critical this connection between Fairbanks and North Pole is, and we would encourage you to bring your bike or walking shoes and ride and walk the trail. The dedication ceremony is 10 a.m. on Saturday this week. At the start of the trail by the Fort Wainwright main entrance, the ceremony will be followed by a bike ride led by the Fairbanks Cycle Club, a distance of your choosing. And because of limited parking, folks are encouraged to park at the Morris Thompson Center, then ride or walk the chamber, walk bike path to the ceremony area, which again starts at 10 a.m. Saturday. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Jackson. And the record show that Mayor Cruz is with us. And I have one thing to share with the board. I received a letter from Ryan Anderson, addressed to myself. It says, I am writing to formally designate Lauren Little, Chief Engineer for the Alaska Department of Transportation and Building Facilities, as the department's representative to Fast Planning Policy Board, effective immediately. Lauren will replace Catherine Keith, Deputy Commissioner, who has served as the acting Northern Region Director and interim DOT Policy Board member in recent months. This change is necessitated by the recent enactment of Administrative Order number 358, which implemented a statewide hiring freeze and placed restrictions on non-essential state travel. Given these constraints, it is essential that we assign a representative who is based in Fairbanks and reliably attend fast planning meetings in person. Lauren brings deep institutional knowledge, technical expertise, and longstanding experience with Northern Region transportation issues that will serve the board of DOT well. I want to extend my sincere thanks to Catherine Keith for her service during this interim period. Your leadership and commitment has been greatly appreciated. Please feel free to coordinate directly with Lauren moving forward. Should you have any questions or require additional information, do not hesitate to contact my office. Signed by Ryan Anderson. We're gonna be talking about this when we get to the bylaw section. A little bit of a glitch in that our operating agreement language and our bylaws are not quite in sync with each other, and we need to talk about that.
Are you sure about this? Final answer.
What's one more have?
Yeah, we'll
It's
get
an honor
to
to
that
ask.
in a minute here and talk about that, so. This brings us to a public comment period. Is there anyone in the room wishing to give public comments? See nobody. Is there anyone online that's right about it? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comments. And Mayor Cruz, we moved the annual audit and our tax return up the agenda. It's the CPA folks, I think, charged by the hour, so we're gonna do that quick.
I see their stoic looks.
Did you want to make-
Nothing as exciting as CPAs
Right.
and an audit.
Right, so I'm Kathleen Thompson, you've seen me before, some of you anyhow, and this is Charles Hickson, he's done the boots on the ground for your audit for the last couple of years. On the partner on your audit, and we have 4 documents today in total. You've got your you have your actual report, the financial statements, you have 2 letters. And we will also briefly look at the 990. And I'm gonna stick to the highlights because generally speaking, not a whole lot has changed in your notes and your financial statements, except for the fact that you have a single audit this year. So we'll be going over really some key changes so you can see how that affected your audit. We'll start with the report. This, actually, it's the letter, that's the letter, we go to the report. Jackson might need to tell me.
Okay.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
one here, so
yeah.
it's the page 76
okay,
in the pack.
yeah, so if we scroll a couple pages to the report itself. There we go. So independent auditors report. So this is the report that the key thing here on the first page is that in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. The financial position of Fairbanks Area Surface Transportation Planning as of September 31st, 2020, or 31st, September 30th, 2024 and 2023. In accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So that's what we call an modified opinion, the best that you can have. And if you flip to the next page, at the very bottom of the next page is the first new paragraph. The other things the report talks about your responsibilities, our responsibilities, but this is our first new paragraph. This is because of your federal single audit that was required this year. And there's supplementary information, which is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. We call it a CFA for short. So this says in here that the schedule, the CFA is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole. And on the next page is the second new paragraph, and this lets you know that we did this audit in accordance with government auditing standards, and that we have also issued another report that should be considered in connection with this audit. And we'll look at that shortly. So those are the key changes to your report, but overall, a good, clean report and opinion. So on the next page, but Yes, that page, not the next page, but the page. So this is your statement of financial position, the picture of what things looked at on September 30th, 2024 and 2023. And if you look down and compare the numbers, the first kind of difference you see is grants receivable. This year you have 2 months in there instead of just 1 month. We did rename this, I think last year under here, it was called accounts receivable. We did rename it to grants receivable, so that is a change. The other changes you see, the right to use asset and the lease liability. So as you recall, leases are required to be capped, even though you don't own this space. You have to put the right to use this space on your balance sheets and amortize it over the life of the lease. And so there you have the normal use change between this year and last year for both the right to use asset and the liability that decreased. And then you had some equipment that got purchased this year, computers, printers, a new owl. So overall, your position, your total assets and total liabilities, you can have an increase, but changes are explained. And the next page is the statement of activities and changes in net assets. Here, what you see a little differently in presentation and the income, we have the two pieces, federal funds passed through the state of Alaska, and a portion of the funds that came this year were actually state funds. So you have that broken out this year in a different way. I think previously it just was one line item in your in here. And then overall an increase in your changes in net assets of 105,000. We'll look at the expenses on the next page. When you look at the next page, this breaks your expenses between program and management. Program being primarily charged to the grants versus management in general. Everything else in this case. We kind of talked a little bit about that. I think we might be doing some refining of the program versus management next year, but overall, just says by category and whether it's a program or management. On page 7 and 8 are comparative. And then the next page is the statement of cash flows. This just says how and where you received your money from and where it went to. So you have your membership fees, federal funding, state funding, contributions, and cash paid out for cash provided by operating activities of almost $10,000. Then you purchased some equipment with that. Overall decrease in your cash of 8,000. And your cash positions at the end of the year, unrestricted versus designated. You have a reconciliation at the bottom between your changes in net assets, the 105 to the 10,000. And what that really says is of your net income, so to speak, of 105,000, 5,000 was depreciation. That's a non-cash item that you add back. You had an increase in your grants receivable. So that's revenue that's been included in your income statement that is not received yet. Cash has not been received, and it reconciles through the different assets and liabilities to reconcile that income to your change in cash. I'm gonna really just scroll through the notes. There hasn't been any significant changes to the notes this year as compared to last year. There have been no new notes. There have been no significant changes to the notes. So unless there's something that someone is interested in specifically overall, we just updated them. And then we get to the single audit information. So this is the new stuff for this year. We have two new reports. The first one on is the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. So in addition to generally accepted auditing standards, a federal single audit needs to be made in accordance with government auditing standards. So some additional standards for us to use. And the first paragraph says that we audited your main financial statements and we've issued a report. Then we have the report on internal control over financial reporting. And the first key thing is that we don't audit your internal controls. We use, we look at them and, but we don't express an opinion on them. So we look at their operating, we use them to design our audit, whether or not they're appropriate, but we don't express an opinion on them. There's some definitions in the next paragraph. You've probably seen them before because we have a letter that puts them in there, but this brings it into your CFA, your single audit, the deficiency in internal control, which exists when the design or operation of control does not allow management or employees in the normal course of performing their assigned functions to prevent or detect misstatements on a timely basis. And then you have varying degrees of that. You can have a significant deficiency or a material weakness, which could be, so depending on how significant the deficiency is, depends on whether or not, what level it is. So overall, the bottom line at the bottom of this page, we did not, no material weaknesses or significant, not that one. Given the limitations, during our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be material weaknesses. On the next page, we also have compliance and other matters. We look at compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and agreements, but we do not express an opinion on them. And our tests disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. The next paragraph or next page is the independent auditor's report on compliance for each major program and on internal control over compliance required by uniform guidance. So in the past, we've audited your grant, but we didn't have to look at some of the specific compliance issues that we have to look at in a single audit. It's at a different level. And so that's what this report says. It's looking at whether or not you followed what the state said you're supposed to do in accordance with the program. The one grant is the major program. We have our opinion on compliance for each major program. And you can see that we say that Fast Planning complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs for the year ended September 30, 2024. We have our basis for our opinion. We have on the next page management's responsibilities for compliance, our responsibilities for the audit of the compliance, and what we're supposed to communicate to you, which in addition to listing here, we have a report that also, a letter that also does that. We have again, internal control definitions. So previously we were looking at internal control over the financial statements and the financial statements numbers. There's also, we have to look at internal controls over compliance. So how do you make sure, what are the internal controls for the organization to make sure that you're in compliance with the grant agreements, not just that the numbers are right. So that's in this report. And what we say here in the first paragraph on page 3 is that we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control over compliance that we consider to be a material weakness. They could exist and we did not identify them. So that is the next report. And on the next page, this is your first new schedule. This is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards, CFA for short. So we have which the money that you received, that you spent, not that you received, that you spent during the year and under which grant agreement it was received. And, the fact that it's US DOT passed through the state of Alaska was quite a challenge getting these numbers pinned down, but we finally did. And some notes to the CFA. That it's an accrual basis. It's not a complete picture of your financial statements and that you don't use the de minimis indirect cost rate. And on the next page is the schedule of findings, questions, costs. So we, this summarizes the results of our audit, the fact that it's unmodified reports, no material weaknesses identified, no significant deficiencies reported, no non-compliance with the financial statements noted, that your internal control over major programs, there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. The fact that we have an unmodified opinion, if there were any findings that were required to be reported, it identifies your major program. There's a dollar threshold to distinguish between type A and type B programs. This doesn't particularly apply to you because you have only one. But if there's multiple grants from different sources, that matters more. You are not a low risk auditee, and that's just because this is your first single audit. That's something that you have to have. You at least have to have more than one audit in order to get there. No matters are reported under financial statement findings or federal award findings and question costs. Then if there's any questions on that. Otherwise, I will move over to the tax return, the letters, the internal control letter says there were no findings. The letter to policy board members, if you look at that, you see there's information that we're supposed to let you know, hey, look at this note or whatever. These are your areas that are important. So this is your 990. We did file an extension. So it's due August 15th now, because I think February 15th was the original due date. And on the first page of the 9, if you want to scroll it or keep going a little. There we go. So this is just key data here. These numbers are gonna trace back to your financial statements. And so I'm gonna skip through the next page. So this, your mission, your program, and the expenses related to that. Again, tying back to your financial statements. This, we can just kind of skip through. This is, did you do this? Do you need this scheduled? So those are just it, but this is where we want to stop. Yep. So this government and government body and management. So this is several questions here that the IRS asks about whether you take notes at your minutes at your meetings, and how many board members you have and how many are independent, and whether you have policies for conflict of interest and how you monitor that. And so although people look at this and they say tax return, 990 is of course an information return. There's a lot of information other than financial numbers on it. They want to know about your policies and your procedures and how you monitor stuff. So that's what's on this page, and on the next page we have a listing of your directors and how much, if they are paid, how much they are paid. And then on the next page, we get back into, not next page, keep going. Then we get back into financial information. So this is your revenue area, which you see all of your revenue is actually in the first category, contributions, gifts, and grants. You don't have program service revenue or any other types of revenue. And then the next page would be your expenses. Also, you'll recognize this. The functional expenses broken out between program and management, again, tying back to your financial statements. On the next page, the balance sheet. Statement of financial position, again, same numbers. So we can keep going to the. So this is a reconciliation here and we have to tell them that you had a federal single audit down there at the bottom and that it was done. And then I think that's our last page of the 990. Yep, so the next, there's lots of schedules. Schedule A says this is why you can, if you scroll through that we're, just 100% funded, which is the key thing down at the bottom there. And then the next schedule is gonna be D or B, I mean, which is says who your major funders are, in this case DOT. And then, but you've already seen the key information here. Schedule D just has some information related to keep going there. This is all zero. Sorry. Yeah, keep going. Okay, so this is the schedule B that says where you got your money. And now you can keep going for a little bit. Yeah, so now we have D, which has a detail of your down at the bottom, your equipment. And on the next page, you have a note about, you know, some other assets and things, but it's all fine. And this note is for your income tax statements. And so I think that's basically, I mean, those are the key pieces. You have compensation information that you have to say if compensation is more than 150, but you've already seen the pieces tonight.
Thank you. Questions, Mayor Prus?
Did you review this yesterday with the group?
With who?
Roger,
No,
did you review this with Jerry or Jackson?
I didn't review it with anyone. I gave it to management for review.
So would you be available for questions later on if they're already? Since there's not been reviewed by simple right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think it went out on Friday, right?
they went out to meet it back on Friday. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, Mr. Chair. Oops. Oh, yes, Scott.
I had a question on, the 990. I couldn't help but notice there was, one of the questions, I think it was on the second page. Was if there were significant changes to our governing documents. And we're contemplating changes to our bylaws here shortly.
Yeah. So first of all, the 990 is talking about the year that ended September 30, 2024. And second, what you need to report in that is, you know, depends on what you change in your bylaws. If you change your mission, yeah, we gotta report that. If you change technicalities of wording and where you're meeting and how often you're meeting, the IRS doesn't care about that. So it kind of depends on what things you're doing in your bylaws. As to whether, because it says you have, and all you have to do is you have to add a note that says these are the changes we made if they are significant.
Thanks.
Mayor Hopkins.
Are we on a federal fiscal year, September 30th? Oh. Not nothing.
And
We're required by federal code.
It's optional for us. We pick the federal fiscal year, because that's the way the grant lines up, it's based on the federal fiscal year.
Mayor Church?
Yes, with the new equipment that was purchased in that year was the depreciation and amortization report on page 138 updated to remove the outdated equipment and add the new equipment.
I am not aware that whether or not any equipment was retired. And if it needs to be retired, we, management can tell me so, and we will retire it in the next year, but that equipment's, I'm assuming, fully depreciated. It's not something that I look at for the audit.
Okay,
And I don't, you know, if management doesn't say you no longer have this, remove it from our balance sheet, wouldn't know.
Anyone else? Well, I remember the days when I did a 990 and it was 4 pages.
Right? Yeah, not anymore.
Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. I will do that.
So I was looking for a motion from the board to authorize me to sign attached to the IRS.
All right,
Move that, Jackson Fox, sign and authorize the audit and the associated paperwork
the 990.
and the 990.
Second, Hopkins, second by Mr. Kraft. Any discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and call the roll, Jefferson.
Okay, Mayor Hopkins,
Yes.
Mayor Cruz,
Yes.
Mr. Cleaver,
Yes,
Mr. Kraft. Yes. And Mayor Church
Yes.
and Mr. Olds.
Yes.
okay. That passes unanimously. That brings us to old business. We're back on schedule here. We're going to be with the bylaw changes, possible changes. I'm gonna throw something out to the board here and get your opinion on it. So one item we do have to take care of is the seating floor in here, but all the other bylaw changes. If you do not want to get into them today, we could both, take it up again next month. Just handle the one issue, addressing the seating of water. If you want to get into them, we can do that. I'm just worried about time here because I know further down, we've got the best improvement program, and that's going to require some discussion. Could be quick, it could be long, but that's the most important thing on here. We want to, as soon as we can get projects out this summer and get them done, the better, in my opinion. So do you folks want to get into all the changes in the bylaws? We'd be happy to do that. We're ready to do that. Or do you want to just contain it to one item here and deal with the city of Algonquin?
I'm prepared to take up the whole item. I don't think there's, I am appreciative of the work you've done and the technical committee's done. I think we can work through it here today.
I would, Mr. Kraft on that, I agree.
Okay,
I only came up with one additional change and that would allow seating lower and easier, so. And flexibility in the future for you, for all of us, so.
okay. Anyone else?
I would be really sick every Wednesday if you want to.
No, this is point.
Okay. We're gonna go ahead and dig into this then. First, let's get a staff report. And move on public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. So beginning on page 29, are the proposed revisions to the fast planning bylaws. As I stated in my staff report, these revisions came from the technical committee, as well as a 3-page letter with proposed revisions from Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaver. And so they are, these changes are kind of mixed in throughout the document, where changes were made. I tried to identify if it was a technical committee member or technical committee revision or versus a Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaver provision. So those are all highlighted. When we reviewed these all together with the technical committee, there was, again, the technical committee appreciated many of the revisions that were proposed by Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaver. So all of those revisions are included in here. But there are just a couple minor sticking points that I think warrant some more discussion here today. And I don't think that they're going to be big arguments. I think that you all can resolve them. I don't consider anything in here significant that that will be a challenge here to make a decision on here today. But beginning on page 29, the first revision to section number 2 there, this is simply relocating this language from Article 11 towards the end of the bylaws, which is underneath the miscellaneous category. But since this relates to policy board membership and the appointment of the city council member and the borough assembly member, which must be confirmed by the assembly and respective city council, I thought it was most appropriate to put it into Article 2, rather than leave it in the miscellaneous, it's simply been relocated. Okay, next page. In the middle there, section 6, has been, the suggestion is to delete that. This section of our bylaws, existed back in 2003 when we formed our original bylaws. And at that time, we didn't have a bike and ped committee or a project enhancement committee or other committees other than the technical committee. And so my assumption is that this alluded to special committees that the board might set up, like say a bylaws subcommittee, and that the members would be identified. And so, but there is a whole another article in the bylaws which cover those other committees and ad hoc committees. And also reading this, if it did apply to the Bike and Ped Advisory Committee and the Project Enhancement Committee, it would it states that the chair would nominate each of those seats, but the way that we have the roles and responsibilities documents set up for those two committees is that there are seat sponsors. So the borough gets to pick 2 seats, City of Fairbanks gets to pick 2 seats, North Pole gets to pick 2 seats, the state gets to pick 2 seats, etc. So this is in conflict with the roles and responsibilities documents that we have for those 2 new committees. But again, this was written prior to the existence of those committees. So we're just simply suggesting to remove this, then focus on the section in the bylaws that cover these other committees to get into the granularity of what you'd like to do for those committees. Okay. Page 32. At the top there, there's language that was added specifying the length of the public comment period for the general public comment period as well as public comment period for action items for the policy board.
How many minutes is that?
It says 5. That's what was given to me, 5.
Jerry Clearworth?
We
So-
like 5, he likes 3, we'll talk about it.
Okay. In any event, this language did come from Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Clearworth, but it was modified slightly by the technical committee to make it clear that this 5-minute comment period applies to both the general public comment period at the beginning of the meeting as well as each of the action items which have their own public comment period. So the original language wasn't that specific, so now it is specific. And then below that, for records, we now maintain recordings of all of our board and committee meetings. We post those to our website. So we're just kind of updating our use of technology here in that we're committing for staff to post the recordings of our meetings to our website within 2 business days of the meeting occurrence. So our website now is similar to say like the Borough Assembly, where you can not only download the agenda and the minutes and but you can also view the recording if you wish after the meeting has occurred. And then Article 7 there, below that, this is where that language underneath the policy board, Article 2, was deleted and can be fleshed out in further detail here. You can see section 5 and 6. These were revisions from Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Clearworth that committee chairs will come from committee membership, and every 2 years the policy board will review the committees as well as attendance and ascertain if they should be continued, modified, or discontinued. So this was added to this section, but as we discussed at the technical committee, they wanted to modify the title because it just said committees. So we want to be specific as to which committees that these apply to. So they retitled it Other Standing and Ad Hoc Committees excluding the Technical Committee because Article 8, the very next article, is that granular detail for the Technical Committee. So this would apply to the Bike and Ped Advisory Committee. This would apply to the Project Enhancement Committee. This section would apply to say the Seasonal Mobility Task Force or any other committees that the board may want to establish in the future. So we've made that more clear, but also flexible, not specifically naming those committees. And again, the technical committee did accept these revisions. Page 33, simple addition of a category of representative for the technical committee, including maintenance professionals. This was an edit proposed by Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Clearworth. The only thing I'll note about this is that many of the technical committee member seats, we list the specific department that they come from. And so it does open up the opportunity for maintenance professionals to serve in the technical committee, but there isn't necessarily a direct link for some of these entities to put a maintenance professional forward on the committee. So that may warrant some discussion, but this does open this up for that opportunity for maintenance professionals. And then page 34, this is our first sticking point, which warrants some discussion here today. Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaworth recommended against allowing proxies at the technical committee. However, the technical committee wanted to maintain the ability to use proxies for their seats. So this is where a committee member is planned to be absent. They can send in a substitute from their organization to participate in the discussion and vote on behalf of their seat if they're absent. And then below that, it's raising the quorum requirement from 7 up to 9, which does make a lot of sense. There are 18 seats on the technical committee, so 9 would be half. There's actually only 17 filled, so 9 actually would be a majority. And I think that we had used a quorum of 7 when the technical committee was smaller in past years. But of course, we've added a few seats in the past years to that committee. It did not change the quorum requirement. So this brings everything up to speed. And then page 35. In addition, by Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaworth, that attendance is important, and any seat that has not been filled for 9 consecutive months should be reviewed by the board to consider an alternative member or removal from the technical committee membership. This is language that the technical committee accepted, but they modified slightly, such that the seat wouldn't automatically be removed from the committee. It would be a decision by the board. So we would have to notify the board, hey, this seat's been vacant for 9 months, and then get a decision from the board whether to remove the seat from the committee or keep it open and keep working on trying to fill. So that's how the technical committee modified this. Okay, grammatical error or fixed there on that page. Next page. For confidential information, this is a rewrite proposed by Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaworth, which the technical committee members appreciated. And then in the middle of the page there was a weird run-on sentence that didn't flow well. And so we've modified that language so that it reads more clearly. Page 37, Code of Ethics. This is what I would consider as your second sticking point. Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaworth added in a new paragraph below the original paragraph. Which the technical committee actually liked that paragraph and recommended that paragraph be kept, but they also wanted to keep the paragraph above it. They voted that they would like to keep the American Planning Association's Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct as the Code of Ethics policy for fast planning. So they'd like to keep that as part of the bylaws and attached to the bylaws. But again, Mayor Cruz, Councilmember Cleaworth suggested that American Planning Association Code of Ethics be removed from our bylaws. Just a minor update there on the bottom of miscellaneous. Page 38. Last three changes here. There's a standards of conduct underneath the miscellaneous section that the board shall adopt and maintain a written policy prescribing the standard of conduct. We do not have a written policy. And no one seemed interested in us writing one up and having one. And since we already have a conflict of interest section of the bylaws, I think unanimously everyone suggested that we simply complete that section of the bylaws. And then attendance there, we again modernizing this, we added in the option of virtual attendance via Zoom, which we've been using since the pandemic. And then section 5 at the bottom there, this is the section that was relocated under to Article 2 for the policy board. So it's being deleted here, but it's being maintained on the first page of the bylaws. So it's simply moved. Behind this is pages 40 through 42. These are the revisions submitted to me by Mayor Cruz and Councilmember Cleaworth. So you have those. In addition to the revisions you've seen in the bylaws, there is some additional explanation supporting those revisions here for you all to take a look at. And then behind that, beginning on page 43, is that American Planning Association Code of Ethics that is currently referenced in the bylaw revisions, but I'm sure will be discussed here today.
Thank you, Jackson. Any questions for him before we on the public comments?
The one change. Article 6, Section 1, page 32. Dealing with keeping of records. Sure, it's not gonna be an issue for you guys in this much more capacity. Our storage of records and freedom of public access, it's all on the cloud, which is, the cost of that is quickly escalating. So just be careful of that. That should have later passes.
Mr. Kress?
I had a question on page 32. It looks like the technical committee voted against this, the change where committee chairs will come from committee membership. So section 5 there.
Mhm.
What committees don't have chairs that's not from their committee membership currently?
Currently, that's only the technical committee and the project enhancement committee. And I'm chair of both of those committees. If this revision is accepted, I would be removed as chair of the project enhancement committee. Problem with that. But then for the technical committee, on page 33, section 5 at the bottom. Reads, the technical committee shall elect a chair and vice chair from its regular members or staff, including the executive director, annually at its regularly scheduled meeting no later than the end of November. So the right for the committee to nominate staff as chair or vice chair of that committee is maintained within their section. But these revisions would remove the ability for staff to chair our other committees.
Which currently the staff has chaired the technical committee and the.
I have chaired the technical committee since 2015, so for
Oh.
10 years. I was originally selected from committee membership. I was a city representative at that time, and then when I received this position, this language was inserted. The committee wanted me to continue serving as chair. And as staff, as a chair, I'm not a member of the committee. I can't make motions. I can't vote. I'm simply running the meeting in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order and doing staff reports. But 10 years running, I've been nominated as chair each year. And they wanted to keep that ability for that one committee.
And how long have you been chairing the project enhancement committee?
Since its inception. For a year, no. 3 years. I think so, yeah. But I don't mind relinquishing that. That's. The project enhancement committee and the bicycle pedestrian advisory committees, they're a little bit less formal than our policy board meetings or technical committee meetings. And so,
Corey and Olivia, have you guys been roped into chairing any of the committees?
Yeah, speaking for myself, I've co-chaired BPAC for a number of years, and there were 2 of those years that our chair was absent or doing field work a lot, so yeah, wound up stepping in quite a bit actually. And then was co-chair of technical for a number of years, I believe. Now I'm back, but it was court anyways.
now it's Corey.
Yeah, I did a quick stint on technical committee as vice, and then I've been vice chair of PEC pretty much since the beginning as well.
In fact, it's the project enhancement. Thanks.
Yeah, just too many syllables.
Acronyms. Yeah, Mayor Bruce, you have a question? No. Anyone have a question for Jackson before we get into public comment? Seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and open public comment. Is there anyone in the room wishing to testify on any of these items? And Lauren, you probably can speak at this part if you want to. You feel near and dear to anything, or if the board allows me, when the item comes up, you can have something up next. Nobody here. Is there anyone online wishing to testify? I'm gonna say public testimony is closed. I'd like to take these in order, but the first one would actually be on page 29, section 1. I'd like to deal with this.
Hearing. Maybe it'd be easier, if I make a motion to accept changes as presented. And we can make amendments to ones that want to be changed.
It's your call.
Move to approve Fast Planning Policy Board bylaws as presented by Jackson.
So we're moving them and then we'll amend them by, like, we'll offer amendments
Yeah,
in a motion.
to one's equal. If they're-
Sure, okay.
Yeah,
Either way, it was fine. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Moved by Mayor Cruz, seconded by Mr. Krass, on the take on that one, to accept the document in front of us, and from that, we will use that as a word document.
in discussion. Good job, good presentation. Yeah. The only one that I look at differently,
Well, we'll get into that.
okay. Anyway, good job, good presentation.
On the,
On the motion,
yeah. In terms of seating Lauren in response to a letter from the commissioner, the bylaws don't quite allow that, but the operating agreement would.
we have yeah, we're gonna get into that here too. That's not here a part of it. We're gonna have to make that change in section 1 here. I'm gonna be addressing that.
You've got that. I was gonna offer a motion or an amendment to the motion as well for Article 2, Section 1.
Now, we're just gonna take that as a separate amendment to the main, yeah.
Yeah.
We're good. Any other questions on the motion on the floor?
Well, don't we need to amend the motion
Hey,
on the floor?
we start to go ahead and make your motion to amend.
I think first, we should just put this document in front of us and then start amending it.
Okay.
Okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Because we have to move the motion and now we amend the motion that's on the table and then we
Yeah.
vote on the final motion for the amendment. Am I wrong? No, what do you think, Jerry?
Well, we're gonna be amending, we need a main motion to start with,
I just gave that.
and he did that, and so I just wanna get approval on the main motion. No, okay.
As per the
I'm seeing
Robert's
what- I
Rules
see
of
what you're
Order.
saying. You wanna do it for the minutes? Okay, that motion's on the floor, now we can start.
All right.
Sorry, and can I indulge it first here?
Mr. Chair.
In section 1, under article 2, members and officers, that's not in red here at all, but we have a conflict. In our operating agreement, the language says, Fast Planning Board, Policy Board shall have as members a designated representative of the ADOT, an SB mayor, City of Fairbanks mayor, and so on and so forth. You notice the language designated representative of the Alaska Department of Transportation. Yet in our bylaws, it says in accordance with section 5 of Fast Planning Intergovernmental Agreement. Well, it's not quite in accordance. They're at odds with each other. It goes on to state that shall have a voting member, the Northern Region Director of the State of Alaska Department of Transportation. It specifically names a person as opposed to a representative. We've got a conflict there. If somebody would do it, I would make a recommendation that the verbiage there that starts on the 4th line, where it says the Northern Region Director of the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities, that be eliminated and new language inserted, a designated representative of ADOT. That would bring us in compliance with our operating agreement. Mayor Hodges.
I'll move a motion similar to that, but what I was going to do was allow for a designee for the 3 positions that are specifically mentioned. So it'd be a designee for, it'd be the Northern Region Director of the State of Department of Transportation, Public Facilities, or the Commissioner's designee, the Fairbanks North Starborough Mayor or their designee, the Mayor of the Fairbanks North Star, or the City of Fairbanks or their designee, the Mayor of the City of North Pole or their designee. That would be my amendment, and then we would leave the representatives for DEC, Assembly, and City Council. That way, if I want to designate my chief of staff or similar. So that's the motion I'll put forward that would solve this similar situation, but allow for slightly more flexibility.
So for clarification, you're not thinking of a proxy, you're thinking as a permanent. If you didn't want to be on this policy board, you could appoint somebody.
And that is correct. So I move To amend the motion. To say, in Article 2, Section 1. The fifth line down. It will say, the state of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities or the Commissioner's designee. The Fairbanks North Star Borough Mayor or their designee. The mayor of the city of Fairbanks or their designee. The mayor of the city of North Pole or their designee.
Second,
Moved by Mayor Hopkins, and seconded by Mayor Cruz. Do you have that verbiage? Any discussion? Mr. Plum.
I don't know if this is an issue or not, but in our articles of incorporation, the three mayors are listed as serving on this board by title. So the articles of incorporation allow designees for the DOT seat and the DEC seat, but not for the mayors. So, and I know that bylaws, you know, well, I mean, they're part of our articles of incorporation, but they provide more detail than the articles do, but it feels awkward. But maybe it's not.
really?
He's not wrong. I mean, I'm sitting here with a disagreement between the operating agreement and the bylaws. I was trying to make it even more, I'm sorry.
You're giving me a good opt-out.
There we go.
For now.
I tried for you too. Jason's got a comment there.
I mean, I haven't reviewed this with an attorney or anything, so I don't, we have three different documents and they all say something a little bit different. So.
Any discussion on that before I chime in? Mayor Church.
Jason Bowles.
Oh, Jason,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna bring up the operating agreement as well, as far as the edits, but that's what we're talking about, so.
Anyone else? Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to do is match the operating agreement. This would take us further away from it, so. That's just the one glitch there. We can stick to the one I originally talked about and we'd be in compliance with the original operating agreement. I mean, I'm game on changing operating agreements down the road, but the headache of doing that is with all the attorneys involved is, and then you gotta get state AG office buy off and everything. That's like, I think.
So I'll be on here for another 3 years, so somebody's welcome to change my motion, you know. Just the commissioner.
Mr. Krass.
I tend to agree that, you know, I appreciate the sort of forced camaraderie that this board provides. And so I'm gonna offer an amendment to the mayor's amendment to strike the designee language for the three mayors and leave only the designee ability for the DOT.
But I tried to do it early, okay.
Yes.
Well, he's trying to amend the
I
amendment.
second that
Do-
amended motion.
Can we just, rather than do an amendment to an amendment, can we get buy off on the original makers of the motion?
I mean, there's no such thing as a friendly amendment.
There is no such thing.
No, not in Robert's rules. It's
So
just-
if you'll just change it to what he said, we can have work on the original amendment.
we want to do that, or we want to follow the rules. I mean, we can just.
Or the vote on,
Let's
the
just vote on
amendment-
the
the
amendment.
amendment carried.
All right.
yeah.
I always like to do it the simple way. Any discussion on the amendment? Well, I need a second to the amendment.
I second
A
it.
second by Mr. Cruz. Yeah, the originator is Mr. Krass. Any discussion on that? Does everybody understand? Okay. Seeing none, we have an amendment to amendment, which essentially just states the change for ADOT. Would you call roll?
Yes, Mr. Krass.
Yes.
Mayor Hopkins.
Yes.
Mayor Peters.
Yes,
Mr. Favor.
Yes.
Mr. Olds.
Yes,
And Mayor Church.
I'll vote on the main motion. Or the amendment.
Did you?
Amended.
Mayor Church?
I did not hear Mayor Church.
Mayor Church, we didn't hear you. he gone?
No, he's here. Wave your arms or something, let's,
There it is.
can you give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, Mayor Church? Thumbs up.
So about a yes vote for Mayor Church.
Okay, so it's
Did he
unanimous.
telegraph that in?
Okay, thank you all. You wanna keep moving down the list here?
We have an amended amendment.
Yep,
No,
now, once it's, yeah, if there's no discussion on that, we can vote on that.
Thank you, Jackson.
yep.
Okay, that brings us to the main amendment. Any more discussion on that? Seeing none, would you please call the roll on that?
Mayor Hopkins.
Yeah.
Mayor Bruce.
Yes.
Cleary.
Yes,
Mr. Kraus.
Yes.
Mr. Olds.
Yes,
And Mayor Church.
Yes,
There.
that's a 6-0. Okay, question for this board is. Lauren Little, now a member of our body.
Once we adopt these.
Okay, let me see how strict you be on it. Okay, brings us to section 2. Does anybody want to bring that up? Moving it, that's just a movement, one section of our bylaws to another. I'm just gonna go by the red sections that, Jackson has covered. Is that okay? And then you guys, if there's something before that, jump in and say, I want to change something else. We'll go to page 30 then, and section 6. This is,
This is removing this language and addressing this paragraph in Article 7. Page 32.
any discussion on this? Mr. Gross?
I'm ready to jump ahead. I was fine on this piece. But if we move ahead to page 32, there was a number of edits. I'm okay with them, except I would like to strike on page 32, section 5, committee chairs will come from committee membership. And so I have to strike
Under
that.
section 7.
Yes.
You want to strike that, you said?
Mhm.
It's been moved to strike section 5 under Article 7. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Hopkins. Any discussion?
Yeah. So the technical committee voted against this, and we heard from staff that they've filled in over the years in a number of positions to help folks. A lot of these committees are, civilians, for lack of a better word. They're not familiar with Robert's rules, and they may have some difficulty conducting meetings in an orderly fashion. And this, allowing staff to fill this role ensures that we are able to conduct these meetings in a well-documented, public and orderly process. So I'd like to retain the ability for these committees to reach out to staff and nominate them to chair their meetings.
Okay, this is one that Mayor Cruz and I recommended, but before I get into it, is there any other discussion on this? Okay. When I looked at the bylaws, this one kind of stuck out at me because in all my hangings around city government and serving as a borough rep for years, I cannot remember a committee established where staffers headed. With one exception of the city, and that would be Diversity Council, but that's usually handed off by the mayor. The mayor's supposed to head that, I guess. And I think at the borough, the Economic Development Commission, I talked to April at length about it, and with Danny at the city, both the city clerks, to see if there's any exceptions. And there's virtually not, and there's good reason for that. The committees need to buy-in and, take ownership of what they're doing. And here we were silent on it really, and I just feel strongly that committees, you can be led, and I don't want them to be led. They need to come up with ideas themselves, but you have staff to guide. And that's extremely important for these two committees, because I agree with you partially, that, you know, they don't bring the knowledge of some of the issues, especially the financial aspects of things to the table. But we have staff there to help them, but as far as chairing the meetings, I feel strongly it should always come with the membership there, like we do both at the borough and at the city. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Jackson, you call roll. This is on the amendment to take out or eliminate section 5 under Article 7.
Mr. Cross,
Yes.
Mayor Hopkins. Yes. Mayor Cruz,
No,
Cleaver,
No,
Mayor Church,
No.
and Mr. Olds.
Yes.
3-3, motion fails.
okay, 3-3 motion fails.
Sports camaraderie.
I have, care, but before I get to me, and we'll go through all the changes you want to make. If you want, did you want to skip ahead again?
That was all I had on this page. Was there, there's a fair minute edits. I just. Um. Yeah, that was the only real sticky point, right?
Anyone else wishing to take up one of these? No, I'll wait till the end to make recommendations. I'd like to.
I guess I have one last one, which would be to, on the code of ethics, so page 37. To follow the technical committee's recommendation of continuing to reference the AICP code of ethics, so keeping both sections, keep both codes.
What did you want to change?
So this had, if I understand this, the policy board wanted to, or let's see, could we have it? Does this keep both pieces, to the AICP code of ethics as well?
As presented, it keeps both pieces.
Okay, never mind. I'm great with that.
It's,
My fault, Jason.
their change is up above there a little bit, that underlined red section.
I see. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I got sidetracked by the technical committee minutes. Sorry. Yeah, no, this looks good.
I would like to make an amendment to it. It's back on page 34, section 10. Looking at the section 10, the proxy section, I can appreciate both the technical committee's desire for a proxy and Cruz and Cleworth's opposition to proxies, so I'll offer sort of a compromise on it, because I think we do have to run with the forced camaraderie here. This is the theme of the day, and I'll amend section 10 to add the word technical before committee, so a technical committee that will be absent from a meeting may designate a proxy, that would we have to be here or zoom in. But the technical committee is able to designate proxies, because sometimes that's more of a expertise that a number of people might have in a department, in one of our municipalities. But when it comes to our final votes here, we should be here for that. So I move to add the word technical before committee, so that it is just the technical committee that can have proxies.
I'm not sure you need to do that. This is under Article 8, which is technical committee purpose and duties.
Look at that. Well, we can write clarification, but that works. All right, withdraw that.
on page
Sure.
34. I move to strike in its entirety, section 10.
Now second that.
Are you allowed to? The chair about a second? All second for purposes, yeah.
Moved by Mayor
And speaking of,
Cruz and seconded by Mayor Hopkins.
you know, I don't know of any other organization group, elected body, committee that allows a proxy, except for I think the US Senate. So, Justice Kennedy. And so I looked at that, and thought, this is strange. This is not uncommon. It's unheard. But I thought to myself, how many times have I had a thought going into meeting? Yet the discussion of the meeting changed what I thought of my vote. And if you give someone a proxy, they're not hearing something that might change their vote or their mind. So that's why I'd like to remove section 10 in its entirety.
Mayor Hopkins.
The technical committee only makes recommendations to us for the most part. And so I think, having the expertise, you can look at the list of the positions, having the expertise here, I think is, important. So somebody from the freight industry could put a proxy in, for their expertise to be there if they're not able to be there. To allow for the discussion to be full. Public safety, law enforcement, oftentimes they're very busy and can't attend a meeting. And so they could put a proxy in if it was something that they needed to make sure their voice was that. And so I think it's important to have the proxies to make recommendations to us, but there's no final action that they take on important matters that really impact our transportation system. So I don't think we should have proxies here, and we're not with this, but I think proxies for the expertise is important for the recommendations.
Other discussion? Okay, you know, I like the efforts, when we put this policy board together, we made sure when we had 7 votes that there was a balance. That was very important. A lot of thought was put into that. I remember years ago when we did that. And when we look at our 2 committees, there is a very similar makeup like that amongst the organizations that we have here. With the exception of having staff, fast planning, appoint 2 people. Pretty much the mix is the same as what we have here. And I like that setup. Although we've got a problem there, because in one of it says you get to appoint them, and the other one that's silent to that. We should change that. But when it comes to technical committee, and this is why I tried to make changes last year, you don't have this mix. That's kind of equal to the representation of the board like we do and the committees do. You've got a lot of different things covered there, and I think I call it a herd of 18 people, not a committee, but it's a lot of people there. But that's a subject for another day. I don't want to beat that up, but I like the consistency of it. We do not allow proxies here. We used to on the policy board, but we don't anymore. And there was good reason for that. I was on the fence, I'll admit at the time on that, but I'll tell you, it's to be on that technical committee or this policy board, of walking in and understanding everything there. There's a few people that could do that, but the vast majority simply cannot do that. I agree with Mr. Cruz. They don't have institutional knowledge of previous discussions or anything of the sort. Filling a chair, hopefully they have all the facts at their fingertips, right? I just think it should be consistent with what we do with the policy board. That's it. Any other discussion?
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Kress.
Thank you. I just want to note that the technical committee, when considering this, voted 11 in favor of keeping the proxies and 1 opposed. And I'm always hesitant to tell another body how they should go about their business. They're a high functioning group, in my opinion, and I think that we should allow them this tool in their chest. So I would be in support of keeping them and oppose this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and vote on the motion. The motion is to delete section 10. Jackson, would you call the roll?
Yes, Mayor Cruz.
Yes.
Mayor Hopkins.
No.
Mr. Krass.
No.
Mr. Flavor.
Yes.
Mayor Church.
Yes.
And Mr. Olds.
No,
Okay, so it's 3-3.
Where have you been all our meeting?
That motion fails. Other amendments.
If I am allowed to say something, I do have an idea for you guys. So have you thought about requiring alternates as opposed to a broad proxy? You could have an alternate. It's kind of functionally how it worked for DOT, you know, John wasn't gonna be there. You know, there was a consistent person that would fill in their place. So provide some of the flexibility of the proxy, but also not the full open-ended, not that speed.
Maybe we could refer that to technical for discussion and see what they think about it. It's a good idea. There's nothing from any of the policy board members. I have one more from them. That would be on the Code of Ethics. Page that on, that is the last one.
Page 37.
Yes, 37. We talked about this briefly yesterday, and I read the 21 pages. I just gotta tell you folks, I've never read anything that's more overkill than this thing is. It goes into the weeds, and it covers areas in which we don't really even have concerns. It talks about both compliance officers and all. This is for a much, much larger organization. And it's just really not germane to what we're doing. I'm glad that the technical committee liked the language it came up with. This is very similar to what we are at the city of Fairbanks with the Code of Ethics. There's certain things we have to do as council members. And this incorporates really in our bylaws, all of them, the statement that we have. So I'm glad that they supported that. But going into this, and you know, I challenged people yesterday. I said, have you read it? And you know, I would doubt that many people have read it up until now, or even knew that they had to be in conformity with this document, which is extremely laborious. Maybe we could go through it. I could point out a bunch of things, but I don't see the point. I'm hoping you all did your homework and read it. But this is, I mean, I was talking to Mayor Hawkins yesterday about the Code of Ethics at the borough. They're not having a lot of fun with theirs right now, as you can read in the paper. And I thought I'd bring one article that I saw. I mentioned this yesterday as well. And this is from Page, Arizona. Their city council, which I think is predominantly Navajo Indian, which is interesting. They adopted a Code of Ethics last year, and then they just voted to get rid of it. And the statement that I thought was interesting, but lady council member there, she's saying, I'm going to vote yes on eliminating the Code of Ethics because I want to avoid exactly what other cities are seeing, which is where we use the Code of Ethics to just continue to squabble with each other. That was good. The Code of Ethics that we have here is, I think, short and precise, and we really don't need to adopt something that was prepared nationally by the American Institute of Certified Planners. And I hope, if you haven't read it, and if you want to delay a decision on it, that's fine, but I hope all of you have taken a look at that. It's a long read. Any discussion? We have a motion to get that?
No, I'm just amazed that you had time to or even thought of pulling something like that out of reading it. But that's why you're Jerry Cleworth.
Did I put a motion?
No,
Not
We
yet.
don't have.
so are we looking at, we're looking at your recommendation for Article 10, Section 1. I guess, do we? You recommend, so just before I make a motion, looking at page 37. You recommended language from Cruz and Cleworth is in red here. And Cruise and Figures are recommending that we delete what, we're highlighted in red what you like, and what is not highlighted in red is what you would like to see gone, so. Is that, Jackson, the way that, track changes is following there?
My understanding of Mr. Cleaver's comments is that, he's proposing to strike the first paragraph in its entirety and just keep the new red paragraph below.
Okay. I move to strike section 1 in its entirety and adopt. Fast planning and its members are required to follow AS 44.62.310 and the fast planning bylaws. Members must adhere to confidentiality requirements and conflicts of interest rules. Board and committee members must engage in civil discourse at all times to treat members of the general public and each other with proper respect. Hopefully you're able to copy those. No, you can't.
Well, yeah, I'll get it.
Second,
Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Hopkins, seconded by Mayor Cruz. Any discussion? I guess that's yes.
Yes.
Mr. Kraus.
I was worried that, I misread this earlier. I actually was in favor of keeping both pieces in there. I guess, I mean. It's my opinion, not the opinion of the Borough Assembly, but,
that's funny.
but. You know, I don't see any problem with keeping this in there. I think that, again, referring to the work the technical committee did as well, they were unanimous in their desire to see this, AICP Code of Ethics, retained. And so, I would speak against this amendment.
Anyone else wishing to discuss this? Okay. Seeing none, the motion in front of us is to delete the first paragraph under Article 10 and adopt the new verbiage. Jackson, would you call the roll?
Yes, Mayor Hopkins.
Yes.
Mayor Cruz.
Yes,
Mr. Cleaver.
Yes.
Mr. Kraus.
No.
Mayor Church
Yes.
and Mr. Olds.
Yes,
Okay, that amendment passes on a 5-1 vote. Are there any other amendments from anybody? Seeing none, that
Move to approve. We have a
think we just need to vote on
we've got a main motion already.
I have a question.
Motion as amended.
Okay, now we're voting on the main motion. Jackson, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Cruz.
yes,
Mayor Hopkins.
Yes.
Mr. Kraus.
Yes.
Mr. Cleaver.
Yes.
Mr. Olds
yes,
and Mayor Church.
Yes.
Okay, that was adopted unanimously. Thank you all for your work on that. Appreciate that.
Welcome to the board.
And we have a new member.
Yeah.
condolences and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to under old business, item B, letter to the US EPA and congressional delegation on penalties in the Clean Air Act. And I let Jackson speak to this. I thank you for your work in this. I think it's a good document. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cleaver, and I do appreciate the board giving me one more month to refine this letter. I have revised this letter to send to the US EPA and congressional delegation on the penalties under the Clean Air Act. Just to kind of refresh your memory from last month, my original letter was proposing modifications to US code, so something that would actually have to go through Congress to change law and then do corresponding changes to regulations to remove these highway sanction penalties in the US code for communities that would be underneath some certain emission contribution threshold from motor vehicle emissions. In speaking with some folks, it sounds like that type of proposal may not make it to the Senate. It sounds like there would have to be 60 positive votes, and we wouldn't have that at this time. And so we took another look at this letter to look at kind of some lower hanging fruit that potentially we could make a change to the implementation rules for fine particulate matter for ambient air quality standards under the Clean Air Act. And in this implementation rule, which was passed in 2016, it talks about the control strategy requirements and specifically for transportation conformity. And the idea would be is that for these control strategy requirements, that we would put in basically a de minimis exemption for these control strategies, such that if we can show to the EPA that our motor vehicle emissions are a de minimis contribution to our local air quality problem, then we can qualify for a protective finding, which is also in the Code of Federal Regulations, such that we would avoid a future conformity freeze. So, this may not necessarily be a slam dunk with the EPA, but it is a starting point. Currently, for these control strategy requirements, there are no de minimis exemptions. That's something that the EPA had considered when they made that rule, but eliminated allowing these strategies to qualify for any de minimis exemptions for a variety of different pollutant sources. But we would at this time, provided there's a new administration, new EPA administrator, new EPA regional administrator, they might be open to modifying this implementation rule to add in that de minimis exemption, which would clear a path for us to avoid going into a conformity freeze in the future. Of course, we don't know the smoking gun here, but based on the folks that I've talked to, this has it's kind of our best chance for success at a lower level without having to go through Congress. But we're open to any other suggestions and remedies. So this is what we're kind of proposing, but I'm also offering to travel to Washington, D.C. to meet with the congressional delegation with a few members of our interior delegation to talk about this issue with the EPA administrator. I believe Senator Myers and Representative Tomaszewski had interest in joining me, as well as a few other local folks here, but I'll sort out to see who might be interested in that type of visit. If this letter gets advanced and we get an invitation for a meeting. This is simply a request for a meeting and an idea of how we can solve this problem for Fairbanks. And if you want to see the track changes of the revisions made between last month and this month, that begins on page 67. But page 64 to 66 is the clean copy, simple 2-page letter.
Thank you, Jackson. Any questions for him?
And this is an action item. Are we looking for approval to submit this letter?
We are.
I so moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Presley and by Mayor Hawkins to approve the letter as presented. Any discussion? Oh, wait a second. We need public testimony. I'm backing up.
That was a lot of.
It's exciting.
It's an action item, needs public testimony. Is there anyone in the public wishing to testify to this letter? Seeing none, public testimony is closed. We'll go back to where we were. Sorry. Yeah. Motion on the floor. Any discussion? Mayor Cruz.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment, thank Jackson for being nimble at addressing this. Thank you very much. Good job.
Mr. Olds.
Oh, Mr. Olds, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough how much this change with the de minimis exemption is something that I would advocate strongly for in agreement with this letter. I was on a call prior to this with Aaron Zavo, who's the nominee for the Office of Air and Radiation. And he is waiting confirmation, but I'd add him to the list of folks that you try and talk to if he's not already pulled into the meeting, if you're able to get one with Administrator Zeldin. This is something that we are pursuing as a department for a variety of issues aside from the conformity restrictions that have been placed. That has been a sticking point of a lot of what folks see as more inane requirements in our state implementation plans. And if we can sort of find an avenue to change either the implementation guidance or the regulation in a way that allows more flexibility for common sense solutions, that is my white whale. So strong support for this.
Thank you, Mr. Olds. Any other comments? Mayor Hopkins.
I don't think we need a motion for it, but I'm sorry to pick nits. Laura Little is now the DOT representative on the fast planning policy for the very last line of the letter. So maybe you get the letter you see in front of you, said here.
I can make that administrative change.
I think that's fair.
Thank you. Jackson, you go ahead and call the roll, please.
Yes, Mr. Kraus,
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Yes.
Mayor Hopkins,
Yes.
Mayor Cruz,
Yes.
Mr. Cleaver,
Yes,
Mayor Church,
Yes.
and Mr. Rolls.
Yes.
okay, that passes unanimously with all 70 people. That brings us to item 8C, fast improvement program for fiscal year 2025. Construction and first we have a staff presentation. I believe.
You've shown great patience.
Yes, you, please, yeah, have a seat up here. For introduction. before I
Yes,
turn it over to John.
please do.
Okay. All right, thanks, Mr. Cleaver. So up on your screen here, page 140 is our fast improvement program. You can see at the top of the spreadsheet, the 2025 construction program. That is, there's actually a couple of contingency projects in the bottom table that were moved up there, which is the Davis Road path and Farmers Loop path. But regardless, the kind of dynamic situation that we're in with the fast improvement program is that, first and foremost, our TIP amendment and STIP amendment number 2 have not yet been turned in federal highways for approval. So despite the fact that it shows there's $2 million available here for the construction program this coming summer, we actually only have $1 million available until our TIP amendment gets approved and incorporated into the STIP itself. And I don't necessarily have a timeline on when that will get turned in by DOT to federal highways. But I do know that the Federal Highways Division Office does have 30 days to consider reviewing and approving that. And based on the latest org chart that I received on Friday, they are now down to 3 staff members in that office. I don't know that they have adequate staff to even review the STIP and TIP amendments. And so it may have to be, they may have to rely on some other state division offices to assist them with that review. So in any event, it's very possible we may not receive a TIP and STIP amendment approvals until the end of June. Another dynamic here is that the match and maintenance agreements came out late this year. I believe the cities and UAF have signed theirs, but it takes a while to get on a borough assembly calendar, about 3 months or so. And those have been calendared for, I think, mid-June for them to consider their match and maintenance agreements. But this entire package can't go out to bid, or at least the borough locations can't go out to bid until those match and maintenance agreements are signed. But we also need our TIP amendment signed. So in the meantime, as these dynamics are occurring, there's been a lot of ideas kind of thrown on the table about, potentially just releasing a bid package for $1 million, which is the current approved amount underneath TIP administrative modification number 5. And then when the TIP amendment gets approved, do a separate $1 million bid package. So we'd be doing 2 construction packages so that some work can get done this summer, then the other half can get done next summer. Honestly, I think at this point in the season and the work that it would take to kind of separate out 2 different plan sets, I still feel like this work is not going to be on our contract until the very end of the summer. And the majority of this work still will not be constructed until 2026. And there was ideas about removing the borough projects and letting everything else go forward. We do know from the city, there's concern about one particular street where there's utility work being done this summer. And the hope is that on the fast improvement program, that street would get paved before the end of the summer. So it wasn't left gravel all winter, but in this situation, that might be the case. In any event, there's different dynamics here. There's different ideas that have come up. I do not have a recommendation for the board. The technical committee did not take a look at this issue as it's kind of been talked about over the past couple of weeks. And I brought John Ataris here to the meeting since he is the design manager for this program, so that he can give you his opinion on these ideas or what he would prefer to do. And I hope that you do listen to Mr. Ataris as to what is or is not possible. So we don't like to create headaches for our design managers. We know we all have the authority to make decisions here, but I do hope that you've listened to Mr. Notardis and what his thoughts are on this situation and what he might recommend as the best option moving forward.
All right,
You're up.
all right, thanks, everyone. I have the cost for each entity here in front of me and all the information. If you ask any questions, all of what he said, I think is true. So currently, we're going down the route of waiting for the match and maintenance agreements from the borough to come in around the 16th of June. And that would put us advertising there shortly after. That would put us at a mid to very late August or early September NTP to the contractor, giving us barely any time to construct anything. And it would likely be constructed in 2026. Any other options that we might explore here at the table? We're getting pretty close to the line where we're gonna be hitting the end of the season where it's risky to construct anyway as well. So we could buy us some time by possibly reducing the amount of work that we're doing down to maybe just a city or $1 million or whatever, because now, like you said, there's that STIP portion of this as well, where the STIP has to incorporate the TIP. So I really don't have a recommendation either, except that keeping the project whole is generally better in terms of economies of scale. But if we want to ensure that like 8th Avenue, the road that the city was concerned about getting paved gets paved, then we may want to decide on doing something differently. So it's up to you guys. I'm not sure what else to say here.
Just be open for questions.
Yeah, I'm open for questions.
Mayor Hopkins.
The 8th Avenue for the city, last week it was mentioned, or yesterday, rather, it was mentioned that chip sealed now, is that the work that needs to be redone, under this project, or is the chip seal being torn up, then the utilities will lay down and then it will be repaved?
That
Okay,
second.
so
point.
if there's, if we don't deal with it today, or we don't deal with it this summer, which I want to, I'm not saying anything, but, if we don't deal with it this summer, it won't be potholed and destroyed over the winter, most likely, because nothing would happen on it theoretically this summer, based on the timeline you described.
I don't think that's correct.
Okay.
Bob's utility
Why don't you come up to
contractor,
the table?
yeah.
So 8th Avenue specifically, we're talking about the area from Barnett towards Cowles. But this project really limits from Barnett to Perry. It's only one block, 350 feet. So there's a water line that is gonna be totally replaced, from Barnett to Perry. The sewer, for the sewer section, possibly, and a gas line going in. So the whole street will be dug up. When you do the structural excavations for the trenches, the whole street gets dug up. So the idea was utility company, each one, the sewer, water, and the gas company, they pay for their own utilities. The city is contributing some money for the storm drain improvement in there. The street will be backfilled up to the bottom, or the upper layer of the pavement structure. So John's project, or our project, would bring in D1 and then asphalt. That's it. That's the funding source we're missing, is the last 8 inches of street.
So all the other work, all the utility work, everything's gonna get done because it's got funding, approved funding sources.
The utility companies, they're paying for their own utility.
Got it.
The city's paying for the storm drain. So this is really an alternate delivery method of the project, where we're getting the utility companies to pay their share, so the project paying for the whole thing. And that's all been coordinated to this point, from 8, 9 months, a year ago. It's just that this slipped, and now that it's slipped, that's threw a wrench into the plan. I'm still thinking let it go through the winter and gravel. If it can't be paved, it's not that big a deal. It's a low-speed road, it's a low-volume road. The storm drain will be in place. Maybe it'll come through because there's only about, I said yesterday, 3 weeks worth of work. Really, it takes 1 day to pave that road. Maybe it takes 3 days to get it ready to pave. So I mean, the actual work is very minor. I could do it as a change order. I could lay it out with a can of paint and just pave the road. So to say, you know, we're gonna let it go through gravel because we don't have the $150,000, there's a $250,000. That's a very high level planning estimate. I don't think it would be that much if we actually did it as a change.
And then, as part of our contract, we could, even though it's a gamble, we could put an interim completion date for, you know, to try to get it done this summer, or the first thing done next summer as well, if you do end up leaving the gravel.
But John, if you got NTP by the middle of August, we have paved well into October before. So the amount of work that's to be done out there is relatively a short period of time,
So
so
our risk is as minimal as it gets.
if NTP came out anytime in August, even the first of September, they could still pave. If that was a notice to proceed to the contractor.
And we will put an interim completion date in the hopes that if we can get an NTP soon enough.
Just for eight, you know, everything else can slip, Dorian can slip, Storrow, Peckin all go next year. Joist, we're doing anyway, the city is funding Joist. Is that a lot of utility work on it?
Is there anything that has access off to Thorough besides the borough? Transportation, that's the only
Not
one.
that I'm aware of, it's a gravel road inside the city, but it's not the city's highest part of it.
Not saying it's ours either.
Lauren, did you have a question?
So this isn't an action item, so we're this.
It is an action item, should.
We're just doing discussion at first here,
Oh,
or
just an action.
questions for the staff. Lauren, did you have something?
Yeah, so when I'm looking at this, I see, I don't know, a third of the work is paths, maybe not by cost, but projects. We're talking economy of scale, but your operation for paving a path is very different than your operation for paving a road. I mean, if you did want to look at splitting this up in economy of scale, be part of that conversation, it looks to me like you could actually remove the three trail components, which would also address the borough national maintenance agreement. Probably be within at least admin mod territory of your what's currently in the tip. And still have that economy of scale, right? Because you're paving an 8-foot path with a totally different mix, that even your pavement mix is different on paths than it is on the roads. So just kind of what I'm seeing, and I don't know, John, what your thoughts are.
Yep, that's correct. There's a lot of paths and there's a lot of roads, but we would have to pare it down probably to 1 million or so if we want to save any time or have a chance of saving time at all, because I think even doing that, the PDA for the authority to advertise that I put in at the beginning of May, we'd have to, I think, put a new one. Showing this lesser amount, and that's the thing that's gonna take us a couple of days to get the plans ready, get it to project control, who's busy. And then I'm sending something out as well, so I don't know if we're gonna save time or not. But there's a possibility that we would, so that's what we would be betting on if we change what we end up doing here.
Any other questions for staff here? Thank you, John, for coming and sitting with us.
No problems.
May I-
There 46 minutes of waiting for 8 minutes of discussion.
Yeah. Thanks for tracking it.
Thank you.
I'm sure you found the audit part really.
I'll be back there if you have any more questions.
At least you had a comfy chair.
I set up the comfy chair for this.
My one concern was, if we take on this 8th Avenue project, I'd like to get it buttoned up by winter. Been through one of those days. That's where Bob and I kind of disagree. The Stones give me advice. I can't always get what I want, but I would like that. We could possibly do that and try and not impeded, so that we can get it buttoned up at winter time. Any other discussion on that before we go to a public hearing? Seeing none, public hearing is open. Does anybody wish to testify on this action item? Seeing nobody. Oh. Okay. I'm used to doing auctions or any little sign. That's just mine. Seeing nobody, public hearing is closed. We need a formal motion, and I'm not exactly sure what the heck that would be, so.
Do we need, I guess we would have to make a motion to break one or two or some of these out, break it in half like, Laura mentioned, and, yeah. I guess that would be the motion. Want to do it that way, the upper half and the lower half? Or $5 million? Is that what you had said, Laura? Was it?
I think is it 1.2 million, Justin, is it currently?
You mind if I go get my tip?
That's what John said this morning, so,
1 point.
I believe it was 1 million,
okay.
of which we go 20% over for admin fund.
Yes.
Probably around 1.2.
Yep.
And I have actual values if you need them for each entity and road and van.
That help you, Mayor?
Think so.
As you're working through your calculator there, I'm looking at Tesoro Avenue and then the 3 paths gets us pretty much there.
John, are the
Top
costs
three.
in this the current costs? Well, I was asking. The cost listed here may not match the current. Project manager takes the estimate every time you ask them, so.
Right, which cost would you like?
Sounds like
West
removing
Canada
this-
Drive, sorry.
All right, yep, West Tanana Drive is 611,000 and 459, if that matters.
And then 8th Avenue
8th Avenue is 209,000,
and Jordan Estates.
203,000. I'm rounding, by the way.
I've had here. Jordan went up the other two.
I'm gonna interrupt. We need to make a motion to extend the meeting. Till we're done.
Move to extend the meeting until the agenda is complete.
Second.
Any objection? We should have changed our bylaws on that.
Are we breaking the rules? Some organizations do that a lot.
Don't look at me, it's their meeting.
Look at that in the future. Thank you. Okay, proceed, please.
I don't have a specific motion unless somebody else wants to make one.
Well, I was kind of hoping for a creative way to get some of this work as much as possible done this year. And get some work out on the road for the contractors. Talking to Bob earlier. He was saying he's talked to a lot of the contractors and they're just looking for anything. They're not booked up for the summer. Might even get better bids because of the competition that's going on right now. And next year, then we pile up with all of that. Just from a business point of view, I'd like to get things done. But I don't know how you make a motion to do that. I mean, I know there's the bureaucratic snafus that we gotta deal with, but we could split it. I'd like to split it. If you can't split it, and if that doesn't save any time, then that doesn't make any sense. But I would just like, maybe the motion is to have, DOT engineering, know, the borough and the city do whatever they can to get as many of these projects done. Spend the money, but
Well,
I don't know what else you can say.
well, then on behalf of Fairbanks Contractors, you convince me, Jerry, and I will make a motion to split out the the West Panama Drive and the 8th Avenue projects from the FY 25 tip priorities and allow those to move forward in an expedited fashion in a way that our funding allows.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions? Discussion.
So is there any interest, there's a couple of small projects in North Pole that would probably still fit within, our approved amount in the tip? You wanna grab those as well, or were you just?
You know, the Chino Lakes one is slightly bigger, so I didn't wanna, go with that one. There is the Norfolk High School Boulevard. I just drove it yesterday, wasn't terrible, and it's very small. And the, I think, you know, one thing we heard yesterday at the Policy Advisory Committee was, you don't get much of an economy of scale when you start having things placed all over, because they have to demobilize everything and set it back up. So you'll lose your economies of scale if you're all over the borough. So those two projects seem to be two of the larger ones. And yeah. So that's why.
Yeah, appreciate the discussion, thanks.
I will say West Tanana could definitely use some love.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely can. It's just the road, not the bike path, right? Or not the, yeah.
It's my understanding, yeah, repaved road.
Okay. The, fortunately, it'll be later in the summer, no matter what, and hopefully it doesn't impact the music in the garden parking.
It will.
Then buses will have to run even better from the parking lot. Yeah, it's no,
We'll also be hosting our free bike rally.
there you go.
So are you wanting to include the two City of North Pole ones, or is that what I heard?
No, not finally. Economies of scale will allow it to. That's it.
If I may, Chair, I also agree with Mayor Hopkins about that. I think with everything going on at Chino Lakes, the need for the repaving on 4th and NPHS certainly can wait until the economy of scale happens out there at Chino Lakes for those entrances and paving.
Thank you. You're being very noble. Any other discussion? Or do we have a motion that? Did you make that a formal motion?
Yes, you did. And he seconded.
Okay, did you get that? Okay, seeing no, any further discussion? The motion is, if I remember it right, that we proceed on West Tanana Drive and 8th Avenue for top two projects, is that correct?
Correct. Nope.
Clarification
Yeah.
question.
Please.
This is gonna create another project number, which we have to go on the tip or something. I don't know. There's just other weird stuff that happens by making more projects out of less projects.
Welcome to government funding.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if that impacts it. Lauren, would you know?
So procedurally, what you probably do is you would reduce this, so all you have is phase 2, right?
We have a PDA for ATA and for phase 4,
Right,
but
so
all we
you
have is
pull
phase-
that PDA back and you would resubmit it with just the new scope on it. For the reduced scope, and then when you go to ATP, construct on the future phases.
Yeah.
Right, since your phase 2 covers everything,
Oh, yeah,
Good
should be
there.
good, yeah.
Yeah.
We just spin
You-
projects out all the
your 913 is now just gonna be 8th Avenue and West Ridge.
time. Okay.
They speak a different language.
Sorry about all that.
No, it's totally fine. We're laughing at
We,
ourselves.
we knew it exactly what we were talking about too.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah. Okay. Jackson, would you call it?
West side. Thank you.
Mayor Hopkins,
Yes.
Mayor Bruce,
Yes.
Mr. Clearwood,
Yes.
Mr. Kraus,
Yes.
Ms. Levitt,
Yes,
Mayor Church,
Yes.
Mr. Olds.
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you all for your input, discussion on that. That brings us to informational items. Jackson.
Yeah, the first informational item is the monthly update on federal actions potentially impacting MPOs. So I have two things, I guess, to share with you this month. First one of which is the National Association of MPOs, which represents the 400+ planning organizations like ourselves across the country, has advanced their legislative priorities to Congress on the next transportation bill. And so page 143 just kind of outlines some of the themes. This National Association of MPOs is asking that the next transportation bill have increased planning funds for operations like ourselves here at Fast Planning to do our work and meet the federal planning requirements. They're also asking that metropolitan planning organizations become direct recipients of certain federal funds, so they wouldn't necessarily be cycled through state DOTs. We would be direct recipients of those funds. Not sure I would necessarily be in favor of that. I feel like I would have to hire a CPA to manage that process. But in any event, there's much larger MPOs across the country, you know, that serve millions of people that do have staff that could serve as direct recipients. They're asking to reduce local match for federal transportation programs. In Alaska, we already have a very low match rate at 9%, but most other states have to pay a 20% match rate on federal funds that they access. So that's where that came from. And allowing carryover federal funds year to year, in case like sometimes the delays like what we're seeing right now, that we could carry forward current year funds to the next year, so we can't get them obligated on projects. And then shifting away from some of the discretionary funding for grants and simply providing those, providing that funding kind of equitably across the states via formula funding. So it's basically based on population, that money would be divided up as opposed to all of us trying to compete for it underneath the discretionary grant program. So that is their priorities that they've already advanced, and some individual MPOs have shared these with their congressional delegation to support these. So if I make it to Washington DC to meet with the congressional delegation, this is probably something that I would speak with our delegation about too. So it's just a simple one pager that we're all being asked to share with our boards and our legislatures and congressional delegation. The next thing in the media packet, pages 144 to 147. It seems like each week there's a series of memos or directives that comes out of the US DOT. And this is one from April 23rd. There's been many since, but I thought this. They're targeting, you know, review of programs and specifically any discriminatory policies or practices designated to achieve DEI goals. And this letter states that violates federal law. So this is not only in our policies, programs, or activities that we carry out, but it's also applies to our personnel practices. And then, or on the DOT side, you know, any, say, preferential treatment that may exist for contracts, you know, for local contractors that might fit this bill. And they simply state that non-compliance with applicable federal laws will result in loss of federal funding from DOT. This is a letter that was kind of distributed far and wide to just about every organization that receives federal highway funds, and even UIF got this letter. So it's something that we have to pay attention to, you know, moving forward as we review our existing policies and programs and advance things up for federal approvals. They'll be looking for certain items. So that concludes that information item.
Any questions? Thank you, Jackson.
Yep.
Offsets, obligations.
Yeah, beginning on page 148, our current obligations. We've been kind of stagnant at this level. We're only at 60% obligations on the year. Our biggest obligation of the year will be Yankovich Mill Hill Road reconstruction. And as I understand, that is going to go out to bid here within the next month or so. It sounds like that one's on track to get bid this summer. So that'll significantly increase our obligations. But there is quite a bit in this obligation report, writing on approval of our TIP amendment that we turned to the DOT in April 18. And in any event, being May of the federal fiscal year, the obligation amount should be much higher than what you see here. So this does make me nervous that there may be some funds that don't get obligated before federal fiscal year end. Because really the deadline to turn in obligations for these funds is August 1st, and that's going to come sooner than later. Page 150, as far as offsets, no new offsets to report, but I have spent some offsets in the past couple weeks. There was a need for some additional storm drain work on Cowell Street reconstruction, and I authorized that using offset funds. Fifth Avenue reconstruction is in project closeout, and they have some additional staff time to close that project out, so I approved that increase. And then our household travel survey had a very small increase due to the latest calculation for ICAP, the indirect cost allocation plan rate for the 102 adds to our projects. So we've spent down a little bit of that balance, but we still have, $280,000 dollars in offsets that are use it or lose it by fiscal year end. And no new updates on project closures the last page. So that concludes the report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? That brings us to policy board comments. We'll start with Mr. Olds.
Nope, none today.
Nothing, okay. Mayor Church, anything?
I'd like to thank Jackson for all of his work on getting that letter redrafted, and appreciate his time and diligence, and just welcome Miss Little to the board.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Hawkins?
I will echo those sentiments for Lauren, welcome to the board, class of 2002, taking over the town. We've shot the school since 7th grade together. I'm excited to see the Yankovich Miller Hill, Yankovich Road, especially going forward. That's something I remember working on as legislative aid 15 years ago, so that'll be good.
Mayor Cruz?
I echo your Miller Hill Yankovich Road. I was on the planning commission 15 years ago, started talking. So just sing it down. Also, Lauren, welcome, and everyone. We cram a lot of things once a month in a short amount of time. And we did very well today. Thank you.
Little?
Thank you guys for the warm reception. I look forward to serving on the board and learning what it means to be the vote person instead of just advisor on the side. Thanks, John, for being flexible as we change your plans, and probably time the project's changed for you.
It's all good. We'll figure it out.
That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Crass.
Good meeting. Welcome to the board.
See you all next month. Yeah, thank you. We got a lot of things done here. If we could at the next meeting, maybe get clean copies of the bylaws. So picked it, I didn't catch that 2 o'clock time thing. Get it next time. Yeah, I need information from Jackson, or anybody else here. What's the story on Mini Street Bridge? I mean, originally, when we were doing Mini Street years ago and planning it, I think DOT had that on the list. And I don't know if that's slipped or what the status is. Does anybody know what the status is of that bridge? Jackson, do you?
Yeah, I can refresh everyone's memory on Mini Street. So on Mini Street, the bridge replacement is in our long range transportation plan as a high priority project in the short term. Basically, for the board at this time, for what I consider local bridges, that is our top priority. However, as the Mini Street upgrade project was scoped out, the bridge was removed due to the additional cost to Mini Street. It's going to be very difficult for us to afford reconstructing Mini Street on its own without the bridge included. And the bridge is another $5+ million that will be added to that project. So it's based on the allocation of funds that we received. It was basically not, the decision was made that it wasn't affordable for us. And so the board had asked DOT, since it is a DOT owned and maintained facility, that they pay for statewide funds. So that's where we're left off. And, you know, this is years ago. So right now, the only thing advancing in design is reconstruction of the roadway itself. Replacement of the bridge would be a new project start. And that can be something that's considered in development of the next TIP, which will begin middle of next year. Consider it for funding, but a previous board asked that the state pay for it and not use our MPO allocation of funds. But years later, decisions can change.
Well, since we're practicing with the Yankovic, what the heck?
15 years from now. But it is structurally deficient and functionally obsolete. It is in poor condition. It has been historically a priority for this board.
And Main Street is on schedule for what, 2 years from now? Remember, right, I don't have my tip.
I think it's further out than that at this time.
Oh, something to think about. I mean, ideally, it would be nice to do that project as one package with the bridge and the road at the same time, if it's possible to do. That was $5 million, what, 10 years ago money?
Yeah. I will add one more note. I did ask Al Beck, the pre-construction engineer, to give us a fresh scope schedule and estimate for replacement of the bridge, such that we can share a new number with what we have called. So, because I believe I did hear comments about the bridge at a city council meeting, so.
And I think that one may be a candidate for a culvert as well. I can't remember.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is, yeah. There could be a cheaper design. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Made by Cruz, seconded by Hawkins. I don't think we'll call it roll. Any objections to that? Seeing none, we're adjourned, and we're adjourning at 2.
Yeah. I've got the one.
Maybe,